Hello and welcome to our Clever webinar. My name is Marcello Mongardi. I am a client success coordinator at Clever. And today I'm joined by Scott Bloom, who is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction at Piqua City Schools in Ohio.
Yep.
And the focus of this webinar is twofold. First of all, I'll spend a little bit of time telling you what Clever does and how Clever has grown over the years. And then we will show you, Scott and I together will show you a particular workflow solution that we have developed in Ohio for the TBT 5-step process. So who is Clever? Well, Clever is a company that has been around for 15 years, and we develop workflow reporting solutions. So within your school or within your district, we can create forms, and then the magic of Clever is that they're extremely efficient forms, but also all the data within those forms can be used to create reports and to give you data that helps you iterate your processes within your school or district. Clever forms are used across Canada, have been for 15 years, and increasingly are being used in the United States. We've developed thousands of forms that exist in our library, but we also partner, in particular, we partner with schools and districts to create exactly the form that you need for your for what happens at your school, so that you can really affect student learning. There are lots of different solutions within Clever. You can see all the different ways that Clever can be used within your district. Obviously, as an ex-teacher, and I'm sure for Scott, student learning and achievement and professional development and growth of your staff are the top of the list. We can use Clever forms to support literacy, numeracy. So when you're assessing students, you can do it within a Clever form, and then you can draw out reports that give you information about your class, that can give you information about your school, that can give you information about your whole district in terms of one specific thread of literacy, for instance. We're going to show you in particular today how it can be used for professional growth as well, and also collaboration, how teachers and teams of teachers can work together seamlessly, and how the work that they do is archived in a thoughtful way within the Clever form. Then we can really, the only limit is your imagination. We can use it in HR for leave of absence forms, for field trip forms, anything where you need to gather important data and have it available in one specific place where all the stakeholders in that form, in that data, know where to access it. Looking at the TBT 5-step process, this is a process where teams of teachers meet regularly and work on common goals. Clever is able to affect that in the form design in lots of different ways. Obviously, it gives everyone a common agenda. Everyone can go to the same place in order to prepare for a meeting. But also there's lots of data that's created through these meetings. Lots of plans are made, lots of resources are uploaded, and those are all kept in one place. And then we can use analytics to examine the plans that we've made and whether they've been executed, how well they've been executed. It's an integrated workflow, which means that we can set alerts and notifications. People can receive emails regarding the status of the form or what needs to be done in the form. And then all this information, all this work is then available upward through the building administration, from the building administration to a district level. So it means that the leadership is shared all the way up from a teaching team through to the district. So now that you know a little bit about what Clever can do, and at the end, we'll have obviously contact information if you want to find out more, because there's lots more to learn than those 3 minutes. I'm really excited. I personally have been working with Scott for about 6 months, but he's been working with Clever for about a year, Scott?
About a year. That's exactly right.
And Scott came to us. So in Ohio, as you well know, if you're in Ohio, the TBT 5-step process has been around for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, probably more than that. But at least I would say over a decade in its different iterations, but for sure in the past, 7, 8 years, it's really been at the forefront for a lot of districts as far as using that process.
And I was a teacher for 20 years, so I know exactly what it means to ask your staff on a Wednesday afternoon to meet after school and begin to plan. You have to take all the obstacles out of the way so that they can really just focus on what you're asking them to do. And I think when Scott came to us about a year ago with this idea of creating a form within Clever that might address this aspect, the team meetings, he really did a really great job of designing it. And it's been really wonderful to work with him. So the second half of our webinar, Scott is going to talk a little bit about what it was like before Clever, which was a solution that many of you might be using. And then we'll show you, we'll jump into Clever and we'll show you what the 5-step process form looks within Clever so that you have a better idea of it. Scott.
So thank you. And it has been a really great collaboration between Clever and us working on this, because honestly, we weren't really sure how this would pan out, working with our teams, going to an automated form. Our district is embedded with Google tools, so we are very accustomed to using things like Google Docs and Sheets to do a lot of this data work. What we were finding was it was becoming difficult to be consistent from team to team, building to building, or even grade level to grade level, because we were using different forms of Google Docs. Because they are so editable and customizable, different teams began using their own sort of process. It was hard to find where that information was flowing. And then we tried to have continuity between one meeting to the next, or one discussion to the next, we spent a lot of time just on the formatting, just on the forms, trying to find that information. Well, who put this where, or who has it, or who made a copy, or whatever the case may be. So the concept was, moving to Clever, that we would have one place where this information was housed, and that all teachers and teams and administrators would utilize to flow that information within that grade level or within that content area, but from meeting to meeting, so we weren't losing our momentum as we were working.
One benefit that Clever brings to a process like this is that if a form needs to go to someone, we can automate that journey. Yes. So we're not passing forms around, it's just bumped to that person.
It is, and that's really one of the things that we were losing was, who has it? Who has oversight? How are we continuing that work that we're doing? And this has really helped remove those obstacles. Same thing here with one of our walkthroughs. We wanted to see, have a tool in hand for our building administrators, or we have academic coaches in this district. So our academic coaches would have a consistent form that they could use, that is housed in one place, that has that workflow built in, and has the ability for us to get to the information rather than and use it, rather than try to find the information and figure out where did it go and how did this all flow. So that example right there is just a basic Google Doc with the walkthrough information that we wanted to see.
So the way part of the transition from Google Docs to Clever would simply be Scott shared these two documents with us, and then we develop a mock-up of what we think this information might look like in Clever, and then that's our starting point. And together we iterate it and iterate it and iterate it, and then we take it live, and then we continue to tinker with it until it really addresses all the needs that Scott and his staff have.
That's exactly right. I do want to mention that the iteration part was very important, because, and that was new to us, because we typically make something and then we just, that's it. This was really a collaborative work flow with Clever and us, saying, hey, what does this field look like? Is this doing what you wanted to do? How does this flow? And I found that to be very beneficial. And it helped me think through the process of the form itself, rather than just here's some boxes, put some words into them. And it really helped open my eyes onto how that flow would work with our teacher teams.
Sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
That's exactly right.
Subject matter experts who have seen hundreds and hundreds of forms, and so they're really able to look at a need within a form and give multiple solutions to that particular need.
Absolutely, and that was the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the main benefits working with a team of professionals was that I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have never thought to construct it that way. Right. And now we have a much better tool in hand for our teachers and our teams to use than anything I would have come up with by myself.
So it's aligned with the Ohio improvement process. I'd love for you to speak to this for a second, Scott, because I also think outside of the actual form, the functionality of the form and the efficiency that forms bring, and how easy it is for teams to work, then there's a whole added benefit of access and reporting, and who can look at the form, and what can they draw from the form that they wouldn't be able to draw from a Google Doc.
Sure. So I'll talk briefly about that. Anyone in Ohio typically would be familiar with this. We do here at Piqua have all three levels. We have DLTs, or district teams, building teams, and then teacher teams. The forms themselves are nominally used at the teacher-based team level. That's where those meetings are happening. But because of the structure, we're able to take that data, that information, and pull pieces into that building leadership team, and then take that to the district side, so that when we get to that district meeting, in fact, we have one this week, we will look at the information housed in those teacher-based team forms. And because they're all in one place, because they're using common language, common flow, and a common process, we're able to talk between 5 different buildings about what's going on instructionally for our district. So we really use this in all 3 stages of the Ohio improvement process, and just in different ways. So, for example, at the district side, we will often pull up teacher-based team meetings and minutes, and review those as a district team and say, hey, what did we see here? Are we practicing common strategies? Are we utilizing data consistently amongst those team members? And that allows us to have that collective overview, collective insight into what's happening at the teacher level. The forms themselves, I tell teachers this all the time, the forms themselves are boxes, and that they have always been boxes, but what we put into them is really vital. Simplifying and streamlining the form really helped us get to deeper discussions, deeper conversations with our teachers about what goes into those boxes. We're not hung up on what format do I use or what do people want to see in the district. We know exactly what it is. There's no question about that. So we have found that it's really allowed us to move further through the TBT process. For districts in Ohio that are familiar with this, a lot of times TBTs will get stuck at certain phases of that process, that 5-step process. This form and this format has allowed us to get deeper into the discussion of what's going on in the classroom. And we weren't getting there before because of just the flow of the information.
Also knowing it must be very validating for teachers, and that their work is informing things at a district level,
Absolutely.
It is accessible all the way up for a district leadership team. It will be looking at the work that teachers are doing.
We made it specific to each building, but everyone in those buildings are able to see the TBT minutes and strategies and information for any other teacher. They are not siloed away from each other. So if I'm a fifth grade math instructor and I'd like to see what's going on in fifth grade science, I can do that, and vice versa. And it wasn't a sort of a gotcha. It wasn't that at all. We want those teams to flow cross content. If you have a
Sure.
great strategy in math, why wouldn't I want my science folks to know what it
Right, that
is
speaks to the
working?
collaboration piece from earlier.
Yeah,
And also, you know, all these meetings and agendas and all this thought and resources will be archived and
yes.
be available year after year for people to look back on it. The teacher could look at their own work, or their team could look at their own work from the previous year and use that as a starting point.
And we will do that as we enter into year 2 of really following this. We'll start. We have a good framework of where we were. We'll pull those TBT minutes and say, okay, are we close? Are we far away? You know, what do we need to change? We've now starting to construct that framework that we can build on instead of rebuilding on a yearly basis, which is key to me. We have these great ideas and then we seem to forget them.
Right, like the iteration.
Exactly. And I don't want us to forget what we've done and capitalize on the positives that we've accomplished.
So now Scott and I are going to jump into Clever, and we'll take you with us and have a look at exactly what the form that Scott designed looks like. And, you know, it could, this form could look a number of ways. If you have a different vision for how you would like a TBT 5-step process form to look, we can design that, of course.
Right.
So I will find my mouse, jump in. Okay, I'm going to Ohio TBT Sandbox. So this is a Ohio TBT Sandbox. This is a version of the form that is housed in a sandbox where none of the data is real. So we can go nuts. And if we were in Scott's, it would all be live data and we wouldn't really be able to do much. So this is the Clever dashboard, and there's different all sorts of different cards we can use on the dashboard. This listings card gives us a list of forms. The metrics card, whatever form you have chosen here, I'm sorry, will give you some data about it. So you could have all sorts of data breaking down your 5-step process or any other form. Messages are just the administrator can put a message for whatever user it is. So we're going to jump into Clever Admin is a fake teacher. And here we have the 5-step process, the K to 8. And I'm going to zoom a little bit. Clever forms work with tabs. So the first tab is an explanation. Well, Scott, you designed this. Why don't you go ahead and explain?
That is, we included that tab so that any team that needed to kind of revisit norms or if there was a question about what happened in any of the 5 steps, we didn't want them to have to go somewhere else. This is what our expectations are at the district level and building level for the 5 steps. So we just wanted that to be sure it was present and clearly evident when teachers entered into the TBT process.
Sure. And
if mainly as just a reminder each time that we do this, what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
Up here, like you can see the years, the different years, so you could jump backwards in future years to have a look. And then we have the breakdown by all different grades. So we'll jump into kindergarten.
Sure. And again, we did this by semester 1 and 2. It seemed that way we could delineate between the two. This is a very typical 5-step form. We have the team members, facilitator, recorder, timekeepers, so that we know who's what and who's filling which role within that TBT. We talked about targeted benchmark data. So what is it that we want to see? We want to see 80% mastery on this work sample or something like that, that the teachers would identify. And then we get into the 5 steps and we look at data charting. You'll see we have a spot for uploading documents. This is right now, I believe it works with PDFs and Excel documents. Right. So that teachers, if they have external data, maybe that this would link to that so that they don't have to have a huge data map or a data chart within the TBT itself. This, I will say, this is one place that we have to and still continue to do work. Our teachers were pretty comfortable with just having a spreadsheet right there. And we're trying to get away from that because, again, we want to know what's your interpretation, that analysis of the student work. We can look at the data at length, but our time together is pretty short and fairly precious. So we don't want to spend a lot of time revisiting a spreadsheet. We can do that.
So you can attach the spreadsheet there as so it's available at a different time, but really this time is for dialoguing around what the data is telling you. It
is. So we expect them to come ready to start to jump into that analysis. What did we see? Where were our strengths? What weaknesses did we see? What problems did we find? And then we'll get into step 3 once we do that. And there's our shared expectations for students and teachers, the adults. And those are, you know, typically that's where a lot of TBT meetings will end just because of time. They're, you know, 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And a lot of times step 3 is about where you get to. So we were finding that as well, that we got here and meeting's over. And we came to the next one and we started on step 1 all over again for the next set of data. So one of the things that we have found is having 4 and 5, steps 4 and 5 here, really forces us as a team to think through those next steps. And these are the implementation steps. Did we do this? Did we do what we said we were going to do?
I want to point out just here, if you do have resources that are specific to a step or something, we can just put a link in there and then teachers can jump to instructional strategies right there so that we can bring that in.
I should have mentioned that. We have a link there to, we use an online planning, like a plan book or a planning tool that links right to our strategy. So if teachers needed to find one, they could go and do that. That's something we added to help put those 2 things together. One of the things that we found this year is, or as the year progressed, that we often now will start the next TBT meeting with steps 4 and 5.
So you split it.
We split it because we found we were missing these really important things in steps 4 and 5, meaning did the strategy work and what am I going to do next? And I think we've gotten a little bit more comfortable with our teams doing that, not thinking I have to jump all over to the start again. Having the forms here has helped that. We're able to look at that and say, okay, let's really think through steps 4 and 5. Are we doing what we said we're going to do?
So this is the full 5 steps for kindergarten, for language arts, for semester 1.
Yes.
And if we, and then you have the meeting date here, and then, but if you want to add a meeting,
simple as that. You
just boom, and you get the whole thing is added again. So
and not to belabor this, but what as simple as what you just did there really fixed one of our issues, which was having the next meeting right in line with the last one. We're not into a different document. We're not into someone's Google Drive. We're right here, and we know exactly where it is.
So we have semester 1, semester 2, and then like Scott was mentioning earlier, you know, language arts can jump into math. You can look for patterns if they're experiencing the same, if the weaknesses that they're experiencing are somehow related, perhaps. So it does give, it's de-silos, if that's a word, all the work that different, well, also in the elementary, it's the teams are the same teachers, correct?
Typically, yes.
So it's once you get into middle that there would be different teachers filling in the different things.
Exactly.
So there it really needs more de-siloing.
Exactly. And, you know, that's helped with, you know, across the board through grade 8 to really follow same process, and just give that continuity between teams and between our how we're discussing what we do as instructors.
Can I ask you if there's anything, Scott, significantly different in the high school?
There is a couple of spots, and in fact, it's something we are probably going to add to or sort of modify this year. One of the things that the high school wanted to see, and you can jump into that, any of those, is a little bit different on the step 3 area, step 4, where we are going to, there it is, yeah. Here's our plan. They're really talking about the plan, the concern. One of the things that we took out that I need to add back in is the adult implementation. What does it look like from the adult side? Meaning, what strategies are we going to use? So we did exclude that from the high school meeting. We're going to add that back in. One of the reasons we went shorter here is because our time frames are shorter. For high school teams, we don't have as many minutes together, but we do need to add some of those pieces back in, simply because we need to help us remember to discuss them when we're at our TBTs.
So from a functionality point of view, something you're mentioning is like, you know, it's something we took away, something we'd like to add back. Yep. That's always an option with us. It's a quick email to your client success coordinator, and then we meet with you and figure out what it is that's not quite working. Well, you'll tell us what it is that isn't quite working, and then we'll suggest what we might be able to do to mitigate that. And then we just put it in there and move on to the next iteration.
Exactly. And I already have those things in mind, so I know what we need to work on and what we need to change in the coming year.
Excellent. I think, I mean, there's a lot of tabs in this. There's a lot of information in this form. If you look at, you know, all the subjects, all the tabs, all the semesters, and then once you start climbing through years, Scott, this one form.
I didn't mention this before, but we can't forget that the end users of this are building principals. If I have, imagine what you said made me think of this. Imagine you have all of that data spread throughout 4 Google Drives and 15 shared documents and 14 different versions of this. It can be really difficult for our building and instructional leaders to find this information and see it and reflect on it. Here, right, as a building principal, I can go right here and say, okay, I have all my social studies stuff right in one spot.
Yeah, if you look at this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Google Docs, just social sciences.
Exactly. That might be all over the place, and you know, depending on who worked on it last and if we made a copy of it and so on. So here, as a building leader, I can go directly to the information that I need and really dig into what my my teams are talking about, and be more informed and better able to lead when I get with that team.
Scott, this has been fabulous hearing you talk about all the different things that the forum can do for you. Have you thought about what you might do to support this within Clever as a next step? Have you thought about that?
Sure. We need a little bit more local PD and more on expectations. What goes in here? What kind of data are we looking for? I think that's one of the next things that we need to do. A little bit of adjustment on some of the form components for sure. And that's really based on teacher feedback. Now that we've run it for a year, we have a better feel for it. And our teachers will tell us right away, hey, this works, or this needs tweaked, or this needs added. So those are the big things right there. We want to make sure that we use our walkthrough forms more this year, even more so than we have been, so that we're able to have this data housed there as well. And I do have a couple of other ideas with some forms that we use based on our PBIS, or our positive behavior programs here, that I would like to house in Clever, so that, again, we have it in one place for us to find that information.
Because we have the walkthrough form here, we can run through it. There's literacy tab and a math tab. So this is, you know, you can use Clever Forms on a tablet, on a phone, on a laptop. So this is literally walked through the building in a classroom, observing.
Yep.
And so each one of these, where you see the orange line, is an added observation.
And that's for a building principal or an evaluator, or as I said, our instructional coaches can use this. Those things are invaluable because I'm able to go back and say, okay, what did this look like? You know, what did I see the last time I was here? What kind of analytics do I have? That sort of thing. That's
great. Scott, thank you so much for your information.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to leave this slide up here. If you need any more information, you can be in touch with me, Marcello Mongardi, at clever.ca, because we're Canadian, or you can be in touch with Daryl Denius, who's CEO of the company, who obviously he's been with 15 years and knows all the forms inside out and how everything works. You can be in touch with him. I want to thank you, Scott, so much for your time and most of all for your expertise. And I look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Same here.
Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And thanks for joining us on the webinar.
Take care.